Recording. Okay. Right. I guess we're recording. And now, feel free to stop me and ask questions and like the general deal, right? The contract between us. Feel free to stop, ask me questions, and I can try to address them right there. This is more of a, I would say, expression of my thought process, which is still taking form. So I would like it to be challenged. And I think that's the reason I'm doing the talk as well. So if you can challenge me on this thought process that I'm currently going through, it would help me and in the long run. And I would have something to share with you the way I'm thinking about code and software in general, right? So, right, I think we're starting with this really, I would say, philosophical line, right, in software, where we say, I'm saying we read code more than we write. I come from a Ruby background where all the Ruby enthusiasts are more like, hey, it's fun to write in Ruby. I don't understand why people write code in other languages. And I was in the same school of thought until a while ago, where I would feel, oh, this is fun. Why do you even want to write in any other language? But eventually, what struck me is that more than I write code, I read code. And optimizing for reading code is more smart than optimizing for writing, which is what Ruby does, right? Uh, yeah, so that's been one of the learnings I've had. And as a result of that, I used this in one of the projects. And that's where the topic of this talk comes from, which is creating a framework-less, serverless, node module-less web page, right? So when I say framework-less, serverless, node module-less web page, you will see where this is going. But like I always make a mistake, when I was signing up for the talk, I wrote the solution. I started with the solution. And that was a facepalm moment for me when I started out making the slides. I'm like, oh shit, again, did I just talk about solution and not the problem? So before we jump into the solution here, let's empathize on the problem that we have at hand. So the problem is, this was what was given to us by the client. This is a real project where we were given a problem that you need to create a landing page. This is for imagine like an Amazon marketplace. So when retailers who sell on the Amazon platform, they want to log in, and when they log into the website, I think which is called Amazon Marketplaces, you have a landing page which has a lot of things. Maybe Amazon trying to advertise what services it has and stuff like that, and any kind of important notifications that the marketplace retailers should know, right? So the task was to create a landing page that shows dynamic content based on roles in a JWT token. So according to the roles that have been assigned to you, certain products will be pushed to you by the marketplace. And that's what this landing page would do. So simple, just say yes if the problem is clear, or just ask me questions. Then I'll pause. Yeah.
Yeah, problem is clear.
Great, thanks. So that was the problem, right? Now let's break down the problem into smaller problems. So we need a landing page, right? What does that mean? It means this is something that we loaded every time a partner logs in, right? So it needs to be performant and it should be reliable. There should be, because if the landing page fails, in most cases, the partner will lose access to the entire website, right? And I can't see chat, so I mean, if you want to say something, just unmute and say. I think there's something on chat.
Okay.
It's just good to go. You can go ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right. So landing page needs to be performant, needs to be reliable. It cannot. I mean, if the landing page doesn't open up, it's a huge deal for the business because the partner will not be able to reach any other page because the navigation bar is also there. Um, the second bit is the dynamic content bit, right? So dynamic content based on the roles. So that means we need some kind of templating, right? So that the correct advertisements you can view every advertisement as a component, and that component needs to be loaded conditionally based on some roles. The third thing that you see here is the JWT token. The JWT token needs to be decoded or deserialized, so that you can read the roles, and then of course react based on that. So that's the breakup of the problem. So first thing that comes into your head when you see something like this, it's like a front-end problem, right? First thing you see, okay, I think I should do this in React. That was our first thought as well. Let's do this in React. And we came up with a solution. We like, let's do this in React. Simple thing, templating, read the roles, um, react accordingly, and display the page. Simple. Went to the product owner. He says, oops, I would not want to show the advertisements in any way because it's sensitive to people who do not have those particular roles. So if you do not have a role to maybe sell fashion products, I do not want you to even know that this exists on our platform. So because the dynamic content was sensitive and should not be loaded on the client side, which would eventually happen with the React, doing it purely with React was, we had to rethink that, right? Why? Because it should not be loaded on the client side. But the first thing that came into our head was, okay, I think this needs server-side rendering. So we're like, okay, let's do this React with SSR. But when we did this, right, React with SSR, we took a step back and we were like, wait, do we really need to do a front-end framework here? The page does not have any kind of dynamic state, and there will be nothing changing, no interactions on the screen that the UI will have to react to. Are we even choosing the right solution here? That was the next facepalm moment for us, right? Or the first facepalm moment in this journey. And then we thought, okay, that fair, let's not do it in React. Let's use Spring Boot. And when we looked at Spring Boot, right, like cool, I think this has templating. You can just use the out of the box templating engine inside of it and get done. We tried to reason that bit again. We were like, what does Spring Boot have? So it's like an MVC framework, like a model view controller, right? Does my particular use case have a model? It's a no. There's no complex model. There's no ORMs, no database, nothing. Does it have a view? Yes, it does. And that's where the templating bit becomes important, right? Solves that bit. Does it need to have a controller? Probably no, because it's just one route with one HTTP verb, that is get. There is no other complex situation here. There's no HTTP verbs that are needed. So you don't need a controller to even interpret those HTTP calls. So what would be the next best solution that we can use? Because I think clearly Spring Boot would be an overkill because we're using only one of the features, that to a subset of that one feature, which is view, for our particular use case. So the next best solution was to use Rails. Triple facepalm. No, that would be the exact same problem. We cannot do that in Rails as well, because Rails is again like Spring Boot. So what did we do? The solution was to use a lambda, right? A pure function, or a set of functions, I would say, where we just assembled the things we needed in small pieces and just built our page. How did we do it? We used a JWT decoder, which is basically just one line of code. We could have used a library. We tried to avoid that. And we picked into the library to see how it's implemented. And it's basically like, if you see the functional part of it is maybe just 2 or 3 lines. But we knew how our JWT is going to look. It followed a certain convention, which would not change, of course. And that's why we just wrote this one simple function, which is JWT decode. And it does a JSON part. So it basically reads the particular token, splits it with a dot, if you know JWT tokens, chooses the body part of it, then turns it into decodes it, base 64 decodes it, turns that into a string, and then JSON parses it. Yeah.
And what about the validation of the JOT token itself? Whether it is being tampered, checking the checksums and all?
Yeah. So that bit is already taken care of by a system that sits in front of it. So we have a gateway. So gateway already checks any incoming token from the browser, and only then passes the request. So that problem is solved.
Mm-hmm. And then you have a secure connection between your gateway and the backend app?
Yes. So that's
Okay.
an VPS connection, and it's internal. So yeah, not a VPC. Yeah.
Within a internal network, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah. So thanks for those questions. So those problems were addressed this way. So that's the JWT decoder bit. The next layer that we wanted was kind of a role component map. And so this basically means that, this role can see this add. So it's basically a JSON where the key is the role and the value is an array of components. So that would be a simple JSON file, which is our basic configuration. We had HTML partials for each component, which is pure static HTML. There's nothing fancy about it. Then, of course, we needed templating because you want to convert that role component map into a set of HTMLs, right? So that's the reason why you need templating. We wrote 6 lines of code on that. It's nothing. It just takes an object, a JavaScript object, the key value pair basically in this case, and then replaces the if you see here the line number 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Which says rendered content dot replace. So it looks for these double braces and replaces the key that was there with the value. So data var 0 with 1, and that's how we implemented a templating. So yeah, and of course all this has to be built onto a page. So there would be a static HTML which will have these double braces, and it would just get planted there, and that would create my HTML that needs to be delivered. Now, if you really want to see take a look at the code, it's part of my gists in GitHub. Look for Bitsapien, BITSAPIEN. I will share that those links as well for the JWT decoder as well as the templating thing. I have reused these solutions internally. For example, if I want to decode my JWT token without going to the internet, which is jwt.io, I could just do it by passing value to this JWT decoder. So it's pretty neat, at least in my cases. Right, so that was the solution. But we would argue, right, is this simple, right? I would say, well, it's simple, but like in XYZ. For example, if you talk to a Rails programmer, they would say, oh, I would just do it in Rails. It would be pretty simple for me. If you talk to a Spring Boot programmer, they'll be like, I mean, I could just do it in Spring Boot. It's pretty easy. I just set up my, I mean, for a Rails programmer to be a Rails new, and maybe so Spring Boot, I don't know what you use, I think something around Gradle. And then you would just set your basic structure, and then you would just put in this page and you're done, right? You talk to a React programmer, they would say the same thing. They would be like, you know what, I'll just do it in React. I'll just do a create React app and I'm done. I don't have to, go through thinking the design and all of that, and how you structure and broken down the problem. I'll just do it. It'll get done. It'll be fast. The problem with the word simple here is this, that it's related to a mental model. So if you see, what you're saying is simple is basically you're saying that this is how I think about the world. This is how I think about problems. So Rails programmer or a Spring Boot programmer has a certain mental model of the world. And to them, it'll be easy, right? Because or simple, right? And that's how their brains are wired to work. So if you take a Rails program, put them in a Spring Boot project, their heads will turn in the beginning, of course, but then they will very easily get acquainted to it because both are like kind of MVC. But to take a React programmer and put them into a Spring Boot thing, it's difficult. They will take a while to understand what's going on, because there are a lot of things there are a lot of moving parts inside Spring Boot, and the same thing would be for Rails as well. right? And what essentially they are saying is, they're not saying, or we as me as a Ruby programmer, whatever, we're not saying that, it's simple. We're saying it's easy. It's easy to do it and it's faster, right? So why am I stressing on the point on this, easy, simple, like what's the deal here, right? There's a necessary to understand the difference between easy and simple, because ease is I can maybe hear, someone Rich Ricky, to explain the difference between simple and easy, right? So there's this talk that is called Simple Made Easy, and part of this talk has been inspired from that, and I will show some slides that made sense. So, for example, he shows us up. So Jistra says simplicity is a prerequisite for reliability. So we'll go deeper into what this actually means. I think we kind of agree with this, most of us, or if not, we will try to understand it. The basic idea here being building simple systems is necessary to build that, to make them good, right? Those system designs to be good. We don't kind of focus on that enough. Multiple reasons, we'll get to them as well. So if you look at the word origins, right? Simple and easy. Simple is basically simplex, right? It's one fold, one braid, which is the opposite of complex. Whereas easy is more about ease or lying near or familiarity, right? Which is the opposite of hard. So when a Rails programmer says it's easy, it basically means they're more familiar with the Rails mental model. If a React programmer says it's easy in React, it says, I'm familiar with that. I understand those things. That's the reason I find it easy. But is that simple? Might not be, right? It can be like intertwined and complex. Like reiterating that point here. For example, say you're like you want to speak German, right? Like you hear hear somebody speaking in German or somebody speaking Japanese. You don't understand German, right? That's the reason you'll be like, I don't understand that language. But does that make that language bad or good for that matter? It does not, right? It's just a medium. But once you learn German, once you're familiar with it, you will become comfortable with it. So that's kind of the difference that I'm trying to draw out.
So how many different type of roles are we targeting here?
On the solution there, so they are like I think
The number of roles.
around 4 to 5 roles there that we're targeting. Yeah.
And in the future, what is the possibility of those roles to grow?
It would, I don't know. It would grow to more 4 or 5. That's it. Again, I can't predict the future, so we don't know where the business will go, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think if the role is less, like you only have to develop 4 different type of pages, landing pages, then I think it is better. Like, it's what I think is better. Like, create simple 4 different templates and based on the roles, just render those.
I think that's much.
Yeah, because this Lambda will again increase the cost and infrastructure budget, because again, for every request you have to pay, right? Yeah. So in that terms, if I'm thinking, so if again, if you're like dealing with something like a huge amount, like a Facebook or something kind of a deal, then there could be many roles, and for each role you have to render a different page. Then I would definitely prefer this kind of solution. But I think if my roles are limited, like 4 or 10 or 20, then I think template based is better. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. In fact, you've just we've been thinking about this as well. That we could just generate the pages on build time, and maybe cache it on an S3 with a certain key. So if this role combination comes in, we have this page to be delivered. This role combination comes in, we deliver this page. So yeah, that's a much simpler approach. Yes. Right. So yeah, going back to simple and easy. So what we realized is simple is not equal to easy. I hope that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And but we would reason on, like that's something that I went through as well. Why do you need simplicity when ease makes life easy, right? Why do you want to wreck your head against the wall and say, hey, you know what? Why do I want to design my systems to be simple? Because simple eventually leads to ease. How does that happen? you have this ease of understanding. So a developer from any background can come and understand your piece of code, right? And what's going on there. Why do they need to do that? Because they will change the system. And like we just saw, the future, we cannot predict the future. We don't know how the business will grow. Tomorrow, there might be even lesser roles, or maybe even 100 roles, or even one. So we don't know. Or maybe the product owner says, I'm ditching the landing page altogether. We'll just redirect to some other page. So whatever can happen. So we need to be ready to even trash away that code, right? That's one. The ease of debugging. I think this is the most important thing, I believe, because when you have to look for bugs and when you have to look for errors in your system, it can be a major pain if your system is complex, because understanding the system itself will take us a while. So that's the reason we say, we need ramp up times and things like that. So, the basic value of simple things is simple things are more focused. Like in this case, where we are trying to see that even like, why did the whole microservices world start going? So it became such a big thing recently because of this single responsibility principle, right? Do one thing and do it well. So when your services or your systems are more focused, they will be much simpler. If you're not trying to do multiple things in the same thing. Going back to the fact that we cannot predict the future, so don't add complexity. Saying, for example, a lot of times I would say to myself, "Oh, just let's go ahead with Rails." I mean, it comes with logging, it comes with it will take care of any kind of attacks, security vulnerabilities, and all that. But reason that, do you really need that there, right? Don't add these incidental complexities just because you might need it in the future. You might need another endpoint, maybe. That's the reason you just use Rails. So one, you cannot predict the future. And I think the basic principle, you're not going to need it. Going by that, don't add complexity. I understand there is a need to do things quickly in software. Everywhere we are told, this is the sprint, you got to finish things up. And there's a huge incentive for us to, just leave all of this, the whole simplicity bit, and get to what we know and start writing software and finish it off. I would suggest resist it, because delivering a ball of mud versus delivering what is actually useful, understanding what the client or the business needs will reap bigger benefits in the future than in the short run. We need to start asking the right questions, right? Like to even get to this kind of thought process. Does the software do what it is supposed to do? Is it of high quality? Can we rely on it? Can problems be fixed along the way? Can the requirements change over time, and how, right? So to solve all of this, you might know Spring Boot, right? But if you see, the difference here is you will still need a ramp up time. You will still need to grasp the code base. You will still need to understand the culture and the way the software has grown in that particular team and those particular set of developers. It does not mean that once you know Spring Boot, you can go to any Spring Boot project and you are on fire and you're delivering things from minute zero. That's not going to happen. So what ease brings is, when you make things easy, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, which background you're coming from. You will understand the system very clearly. And that brings us back to the fact, which we started with, that we read code more than we write. So design your systems for readability and not the ease of writing. In our case, which I use Spring Boot, React, and Rails, right? And this also shows up in the Zen of Python, which I really like. This is one of the favorite guiding, I would say, texts for me. And third point in Zen of Python is simple is better than complex. And if you see, every line after that just extends it. So yeah, that's the end of the talk.